Nothing's better than fresh fruit from the garden. I just can't say that enough.
This particular plant will actually shoot up additional leaf tissue.
The program was to create food for the public. They are public orchards.
It's a lot of work, but it really is worth it when you see all these blooms, and it's gorgeous.
Hello and welcome to Great Gardening. I'm Dennis Lampkin, your host for this evening. We have our garden experts with us tonight. They're horticulturalist and educator Bob Olin and garden professional Deb Burns-Erickson. As always, we want to hear from gardeners across the region who have questions for our experts. On all things gardening, volunteers from the St. Louis County Master Gardeners Program are here to answer the phones. Please call locally at 218-788-2847, or you can email us at ask@wdse.org. Let's talk about the current conditions.
We're melting snow, just
nice
all
day
done.
today, yeah.
Beautiful day today. So hopefully, it's one of the longest winters on
We've been making
memory,
ice. I
think.
mean, this week we made ice.
Yeah,
24 inches of ice on some lakes north.
isn't
Wow.
that something?
Yeah.
Yep. And there's snow's melting.
Well, the growing season is right around the corner, and tonight we wanted to highlight CSAs. We visited the Soul Fed Farm in Duluth and met with farmer Liz Stowe-Meyer about operating a CSA in the region.
My name's Liz Strohmeyer, and I am the owner and operator of Soul Fed Farm. It's a CSA and market garden, and we also have a farm stand. We're just on Lismore Road, right outside of Duluth. We purchased the property in 2016. So we started originally with, it would be nice to have a garden for us. Instead of building 1 or 2 raised beds, I built 16. A couple of years ago, I said, I really think this would be fun to do this as a business. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. You pay for your seasonal share up front. So you pay for it sometime in the spring, and then that farmer can use it for seeds and compost and infrastructure to create a large enough garden for all of the CSA members. And then you get, a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, whatever that CSA wants to offer for a share. So we run a 16-week CSA pickup program. There's some farmers that do 14 weeks or some that'll do 20. And every CSA is a little different with how they run it. We grow over 40 different varieties of food. Just on a couple of acres, enough food for, probably about 60 to 75 families that do CSAs. It doesn't take a lot. As far as out in the field, you can be as elaborate or as simple as you want. So for us, we are a low-till and no-till farm. So a low-till meaning we have to till that land up. Well, don't have to, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. But we have tilled in the past one time to get the soil loosened up, and then we integrate a ton of organic matter. We form the beds by hand, and then we don't till after that. They're there, so we keep adding to them. Everything that we pick and harvest is by hand, using either, a kitchen knife or a harvesting knife. We'll use racks kind of like these, but without the lights, to dry, late summer we'll start drying out our garlic and our onions and things like that. We spelt Soul Fed, S-O-L, for the sun, right? Because these plants are fed by the sun, we're fed by the sun, but also I'm putting my heart and soul into this because it's just something that I absolutely love.
Thanks. What a great way to get some fresh veggies if you don't have the room or don't have the time to grow them yourself.
Fresh and local.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to some questions. This is from Joanne. She has Annabelle hydrangeas on the east side of the house. When do you prune them, and what do you use as fertilizer?
Well, the nice thing is she gave us a variety,
Yay.
right?
Yes, yes.
So this is the old-fashioned Annabelle,
Ophelia.
Macrophylla, and that one does bloom on new wood. So she can prune it right to the ground, and she has her choice, I guess, in the fall. A lot of people will leave that up for winter interest, some of the old material that's died back, but that'll come from the roots, and then it'll bloom just a little bit later in the year. All the new buds will be formed. Some of the new hydrangeas are very popular, but you have to be careful, because some actually will be blooming on old wood that gets set in the fall of the year, so you don't want to prune those at ground level. Some of the newer kind of spectacular, colorful varieties are in this category. They're blooming on old wood. So you have to kind of know your variety and what you're dealing with there. Fertilizer, you want to touch on that?
Oh.
Well, fertilizer, I think, again, as those buds are emerging or as the plants are beginning to emerge, particularly with our soils, unless she has a lot of compost and well-rotted manure in there, she's going to need some nitrogen fertilizer. That should all go on in the spring of the year. And you take a soil test if she needs P and K, phosphorus and potassium. That can go on at that time as well. But just as they're emerging and as the leaves and stems are beginning to unfold. So that'll be a little while yet, but spring of the year, definitely.
Okay. Mary from Duluth. She planted a Honeycrisp apple tree 7 years ago. It is her only tree, but it has never blossomed and never had apples. Why?
Well, there could be a couple reasons, right?
My opinion is that it's in too deep.
Okay.
We will see when we have the trees in containers at the greenhouse, they'll bloom right in the containers. We've had them fruit right in the containers because there's lots of pollination. But we know how to plant it. We know that top lateral root needs to be right at the soil surface. And sometimes people, either it's planted incorrectly when they get it, or they just over mulch, or they just put it in too deep. And a lot of times people really want to stomp it in. And I've seen a lot of compression and soil compaction. And soil planting is very important.
I agree with that. The other thing is it may not really go into mature phase because it won't really set blossoms until it's mature. And because Honeycrisp is strictly a zone 4, sometimes they can be stressed a little bit, so that's going to take a little longer. Fertility again in the early part of the year, and just be a little patient as long as she's getting good green growth. 7 years a little long, but it may have been stressed, and I think just be patient with it.
Okay. Sharon from Hayward, Wisconsin has a peony that was planted 20 to 30 years ago. Every year there are only about 2 or 3 buds, but they never even open. She's never divided it. What's wrong?
Boy, it's an older plant, it's
Right,
herbaceous. And what I'd say there, because she does indicate she had buds that didn't open. We're going to talk about peonies a little later. They're great, almost trouble-free, almost pest-free. The one problem they have with disease is botrytis, which is a fungal disease, also known as gray mold. So if you get buds and they're not opening up, I would say botrytis. Clean up in the fall completely. I'm assuming there's good air circulation. She may have to go to some kind of a copper-based fungicide to get that plant through that disease issue. I think it's botrytis.
Or she could, maybe things were planted 20 to 30 years ago and the canopy has covered, and
That's
maybe
true.
there's just not enough sun getting through, and maybe she might want to look at dividing that up and moving it to a couple different spots. It's an older variety, so it's hardy enough, obviously peonies are, that she might want to move a piece of it into more
Obviously.
sun and more wind, because there's environmental control too there.
Obviously, there isn't always a real simple answer. Maybe too deep is another big
That's
reason.
true.
So if you're going to divide it, let's get it up a little bit.
Okay.
Sorry, Dennis.
Speaking of peonies, the snow has melted and we're all anticipating flowers to be in bloom soon. To prepare for these sites, let's check out some peonies. We found a few years ago, we did a tour of Elizabeth Donley's gardens where she showed off some of her fantastic peonies.
I'm Elizabeth Donley, and these are my gardens. I've had peonies in my life, my entire life. My grandfather was a hybridizer. We moved 7 times when I was in childhood, and the last thing we packed up and put on the moving truck was our peony roots. This is Kansas. For anybody who grows it, it's awesome color, sturdy stems, tall. Kansas is a double. And Mr. Ed here is a bomb. Those are the 2 of the primary shapes of blooms. The difference is that there's 2 types of petals, and then a double will just look like this, same petals all the way through. And Scarlett O'Hare, who's finished blooming, is a single. So she has just 1 row of outer petals. Golly is pink and yellow, so it's a wonderfully joyous bomb peony, but it's one of the last ones to bloom. This is Hermione, which has a really sweet scent. It is honey gold. That's vivid rose. It smells exactly like a rose. They're pretty easy to grow. It's a northern plant because it needs 600 hours of below freezing temperature to bloom. Walter Maines is a very interesting peony. If you notice, his inside is confetti shaped. Chocolate Soldier is a pretty little red tucked down there. Dinner Plate is opening today, which is one of the last ones, and it's so dense that it will, when it's fully open, it will be the size of a dinner plate. This tree peony is called the Sun. Prometheus. It's an amazing tree peony. This is Doreen, and she's new this year. This is Angel Cheeks, a good smelling one of the old varieties. That is the only peony that I have in my garden that my grandfather was involved in the hybridization of. It has lacquered petals. You can see how shiny they are. Helen Matthews, her petals are heart-shaped, and so we press them and then stick them in valentines.
Fascinating. If you walk by Liz's house when they're in bloom, you can smell them. Bob, you wanted to talk about the Duluth peony.
Well, as long as we were talking peonies, here is our namesake from this area. This is the Duluth peony, and it was introduced a long while ago in the 30s, and I'm kind of would have to ask Liz if in fact her grandfather might have been involved in the hybridization of that particular peony. It's a big double, it's beautiful, it's resistant to disease, got the old-fashioned thick leaves on it, and got a great name too, the Duluth peony. And it's available in the trade yet.
It's beautiful.
It's fantastic. I have a few pictures of my own garden from last year to share also. This is my formal garden. It's on the south side of my house. It's a winter hardy. There's geothermal in the center of the formal garden, boxwoods, which we spray and wrap in the winter, pachysandra there, mugo pines, and we do something different in the urns every year. But my partner and I laid all the brick sidewalks and everything. When we first moved into the house, there were 6 or 8 of the 60-foot tall black spruce. We took them all down on day one and then proceeded to dig up the entire yard to make run in new water, gas, and sewer lines, and had a clean slate to work with. So this is what we came up with. The upper yard on the corner of 1st and 21st is made to resemble the waves rolling in on Lake Superior, and it includes multicolored rocks of different kinds, huge granite boulders. There's about 7 tons of granite boulders on the corner, and pachysandra and mondo grass, and then it goes into bird's nest spruce and barberry bushes, all very drought tolerant. We do have a drip system to the window boxes and that sort of thing, but it's kind of fun. People enjoy it. This is along the stone wall. We reclaimed stone from a building that was being demolished in Duluth. Bob Swanson helped harvest the stone and set it, and makes a nice backdrop for the hostas there.
You know, I've admired your landscaping for many, many years, even before I knew you, Dennis. And the other thing I'll comment on, I think it's minimal maintenance, lower maintenance, and nice blocks of plant material. And so you're following a lot of good principles of design.
And thanks to you, I had to pull back all the mulch and remove it.
There we go.
And use compost. So
Nice.
let's get to a few more questions here. Mike from Duluth. The Friedenberg area, raspberries, best fertilizer to use on those raspberries?
Again, we always say soil test, and if he's deficient in phosphorus or potassium, he wants a balanced fertilizer. But every year, again, just like when we were talking about the hydrangeas, I think you want some high nitrogen fertilizer. You can use a lawn fertilizer. I'll pass this on because it doesn't have any phosphorus. We typically in our heavier soils have plenty of phosphorus, as long as you don't have an herbicide in there. So it's an inexpensive way of getting a soluble nitrogen, and that should go on as the leaves are unfolding in the spring of the year and not after that.
Okay. Patty from Duluth. When do cherry trees need to be pruned? Is it too late?
Oh,
You know, it's real interesting because I still had sap budding from the maple trees. They haven't even broken bud yet, to show you how late we are. If she wants to go out right after the program's done, because the temperatures are going up, she could still do some dormant pruning, and I'd prune those right now. that stimulates the new growth, and those wounds will heal up very quickly as we come into the growing season. So tomorrow's project, she could still do it.
Okay. We have one off the internet here. Hamilton wants to know when's the best time to plant raspberry or blueberry bushes. Can you grow boysenberries in the Duluth area?
Ooh.
Well, we'll start with the easy ones.
Yeah, you plant them now.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
as
it's
soon
a good
as
time.
we actually did some work on that when we introduced the half-high Minnesota blueberries, and we found that every week you delay in the spring, it diminishes the amount of growth you're going to get in the first year. So I would say get both of those in, blueberries in particular, because they grow slower. As soon as you can, as soon as the frost is out, and as soon as you got good plant material.
If you can get the shovel in the ground.
Yeah, if you can get the shovel in the ground.
And not
Yes.
too much mud. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to be careful right now if it's a bad location for mud and dense.
You're so right, because we talk about having a friable, open soil, and you don't want compaction and so much water, so we want to stay off those areas till they dry down just a little bit.
Okay. Calvin from Duluth here. How early should he be rooting his sweet potatoes? Can he grow them up here?
Oh, yes, he can, but it's way, way, way too early. I'm speaking from personal experience. Warm season crop, it does not like 40 degrees. So I would say hold on to your plants and don't even think about putting them out there until maybe June, third week in June, I would
At
say.
least.
They'll grow very quickly. Also, he's going to get those plants, put them in water, and just never put them in the refrigerator when they're shipped in from the south, Georgia or Tennessee typically. Put them in a big bowl of water and let them sit at room temperature. The worst thing you can do is put them in the fridge. They won't come back from that. They'll keep nicely until it's very warm, until soil temperature is warm. Very warm season crop, can grow it in this area. Some of the earlier varieties is what you're really looking for there.
Right. What kind of soil do you recommend for growing flowers and vegetables?
Oh,
Mary.
well, potting soil is great. People have to be aware of how dense soil is. You need something that is a nice light soil. They have to be able to get, especially for annuals, and they really have to get their roots out. You don't want anything that is compacted or that is really heavy. And if you have that, or you already have it, then you can amend it. You can amend it with some sphagnum moss. You can amend it with some perlite. That really will help to lighten them up, especially for containers. And I suggest if you're planting in a container, fill it with soil. People always want to fill it with something else in the bottom, but if you have soil, then it's going to be able to hold more moisture. It's not going to drain too quickly. But just get the best soil that you can afford, honestly, because it will really pay for itself in the long run.
And peat-based mainly?
Oh, yeah.
For containers.
Oh, yeah.
Garden soil gets too heavy in a container, and you pointed out drainage many times. Maybe a shard of material in the bottom. We want drain holes and maybe some screening so we don't lose any of that when we water.
Right.
Somebody asked, how do I wrap my boxwoods? Well, firstly, I spray them with wilt-proof, which is an anti-desiccant so that the wind doesn't draw everything out of them. Secondly, I wrap them with burlap. I use 54-inch wide burlap and wrap them around using nails as kind of hairpins to tie them to the stems of the boxwoods, and I've never lost a boxwood.
That's great.
They keep coming through. Here's an interesting one. Becky from Carlton. I have arsenic in my water. Will this water contaminate my plants in the garden?
For edibles, or we
That's a good
wonder
question.
if it. I would think it. I mean, something trace could come into edibles.
Could, my thought on all this is it's perhaps more dangerous to the gardener, moving the water around and the spray and so forth, having the arsenic there. Plants tend to have this layer where they're as the moisture comes in, it has to get by this membrane, which is very, very fine. And that tends to screen out the larger molecules, just lets the smaller ones, nitrate and so forth, through. So I think with arsenic in the water, number one, you want to be careful how you're watering, and you don't want any kind of a mist at all. It should not be a major problem for your plants.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
And now let's take a look at your sent-in pictures with local dirt.
Let's see what's growing in your neighborhood with the local dirt. From the garden of Patty Bastain, we were sent a popping pink peony, along with an eye-catching iris. Lila Coates White is overflowing with irises. Take a look at this blossoming bunch. And some more purple ones that are growing under her care. Plus, hydrangeas is a delightful feature surrounding a bench, providing cozy comforts in a warm daytime spot. And finally, Julie Overham has poppies surrounding a cherry frost shrub rose. Send us photos from your neighborhood. Email us at greatgardening@wdse.org, and it could show up on air or on our Instagram feed.
And let's get to a few more questions. We're getting quite a few tonight. What's the best way to get rid of aphids?
Ooh, on
Will.
what?
And where?
And
in
where,
the greenhouse
right.
or out of doors?
Yeah,
Doesn't
right?
Take your pick.
Right?
Go ahead, Deb. You've had a lot of experience with it.
Right. I mean, there are the neem oil. You can start really soft. I would start really soft. First, blast to them with some water, as strong as you can, as your plant can tolerate, depending on what kind of plant it is. Add some soap to that water, if you can inject it that way. You could spray it with some soapy water and then wash it off, and don't let it get burned by the sun. The neem oil is very similar. You can combine the two, and a lot of times you can just smash them, squish them. But there are soft ways to start. But then if they get away from you, then you're going to have to treat them.
Yeah, there's kind of a hierarchy. You can start just with tepid water, like you say.
And keeping them cooler too. If you can cut down their breeding in half if you lower the temperature to 50 or lower, which really.
And then you might make the distinction between soap, as in a dish soap, and an actual insecticidal soap. Soap is a chemical definition, so she might another step up neem oil and then a insecticidal soap, and then ultimately they'll go down pretty easily with a chemical pesticide. There are a number over the counter that could be used, but you can follow that. Is that kind of a triage, that hierarchy there?
Right, yes.
Starting with the easiest
Softer
material,
things,
softer
yep.
things.
Right. Kurt from Gilbert would like to know, can he grow vegetables in a raised garden built out of green treated lumber?
Oh boy, there we go.
Yeah. People have different opinions on this. There's some strong opinions on this.
Some very strong opinions. The wood preservatives are better now. At one time we were concerned with the chromium in there, and some arsenate too, so we were a little concerned about that. But these are better materials. I would stay away from all of the creosote treated railroad ties. And if you have any concern, two thoughts: line it with a heavy poly on the outside so that there isn't the possibility of anything bleeding in. And then certainly your root crops that you're going to consume, like your carrots, those should go to the interior of your raised beds. And you can put some of the other plants where we've got just this fibrous root system, but you're not eating any of that. And hopefully, if there is the possibility of any contamination, there really shouldn't be. But if there's any, then that root tissue should filter that out for you.
Okay. John from Duluth, will annuals seed themselves for the next year?
Annuals.
Annuals.
I mean, some will. It depends on our winter. It depends on your snow cover. It depends on the annual. Actually, there are quite a few that will, but a majority will not. And a lot of times, if it's a hybridized one, you're not going to get the same annual. But you can definitely collect those seeds, and you can, take care of that yourself. But most of the time, an annual is only an annual.
And we've got a harsh winter and a short growing season, and we want to kind of get some of those annuals started early so we can put them in as transplants.
Sure.
Right, Deb?
Rich from Superior ordered a peach tree that was propagated in Wisconsin. Doesn't say where in Wisconsin. What are the chances of it surviving up here?
Well, we're going to have him tell us. We've still got some very, very cold conditions, and survival over the long term, I'm still a little skeptical there, and I would say definitely borderline, but we're always looking for newer materials and newer introductions. But stay with the good hardy apples, and we had raspberries, strawberries, blueberries. Let's learn how to grow those things first, and then trial. A couple quick things. Protect from the wind. You mentioned that with your boxwoods. So protect from the northwest winds in the winter. Make sure you get it wrapped properly. Make sure it's growing well. No fertility in the fall. Not planted too deep. So all of these components can help. But we're still going to have a hardiness issue both with the plant material and with the buds in the spring of the year.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in to Great Gardening. If you want more, you can follow us on Instagram at Great Gardening WDSE. Subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/greatgardening, and like us on Facebook at WDSE WRPT. If you missed any part of the show tonight, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel and the PBS video app tomorrow. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Deb. It's great fun. We'll be back next week, and from all of us here, thank you and enjoy the garden.